Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is the second episode for our new Executive AMA series. If you've missed our first one with our co-founder Robbie, feel free to check the link in the description. In the Executive AMA series, we're inviting immutable execs to share more about strategic insights from within their domain and all things immutable. We recently initiated the experiment to give community members another way to access executives. We have a few questions prepared, but we've also spent a week gathering questions from the community through our Discord server. Our second guest today on the series is Alex Connolly, who will be chatting with us about Immutable X products and any updates and his perspective on Immutable's future. Hey Alex, how are you?
Hi, Nigel. I'm doing really well. Super excited for the AMA today.
Yeah, awesome. Great background there. Where are you in Immutable?
I'm actually up outside on our little balcony. We've run out of meeting rooms inside the office, so I've been exiled to the roof.
Obviously, who else to exile except for our CTO? All right, in that case, for those who don't know you, could you do a quick intro about you for the community?
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm the co-founder here at Immutable, and I look after engineering and product for the Immutable X platform. So basically, if we build it, it's running through me at some point.
Awesome. In that case, what have we built? What are our products and what's important?
I think the best way to answer this question is by looking at some of the problems that Immutable solves for people in the Web3 space. And that is essentially it's extremely difficult. If you want to build a high scale, high quality NFT project, it is extremely difficult to build that project. Most NFTs that we see today, I would consider luxury goods. So they're things that are worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars each, and they're sort of traded as status symbols and luxury items. That's fantastic. There's no problem with that. But if you want to build something like, for instance, a game where you have millions of players who all want to use those assets all the time, you can't have every single asset in your game being worth thousands of dollars, or your economy ends up a little bit broken. However, there are big challenges when it comes to building those high-scale, high-quality Web3 projects like games. So, for instance, you have the scaling issues, you have issues of cost, you have issues of user experience, and some of those issues are solvable, but only if you switch to a different blockchain, right? Or you switch to somewhere where you don't have the security, the decentralization, the liquidity, or the network effects of Ethereum. Immutable's goal is to solve those problems, but more holistically, Immutable aims to be the one-stop shop for solving the problems of Web3 games. So if you have problems of user experiences, we want to meet you there with wallets. If you have problems with, hey, how many marketplaces are my assets listed upon? We want to solve those problems. If you want to build a native marketplace for your game, we have products to solve that. We are really focused on particularly gaming, but really all high-quality, high-scale NFT projects. We want to solve the problems. We want to make those projects incredibly successful with healthy, robust, long-term secondary market economies, which is, I think, our standard of success for what really great NFT projects look like.
That's a lot of different products and different problems to solve. What do you think is the best problem that Immutable X can solve in the short and medium term? And then later, I want to ask you about the long term.
So right now, a lot of the value that Immutable X has been providing has been on the basis of essentially there's the solving the scalability and the cost and the just how can I issue, if I have an NFT project, I want to issue a few 100,000 or a few million NFTs. How can I do that in a cost efficient manner? And how can I let my users trade those assets? So it's like mainly solving the problem of scale. That is continuing to be a very important problem to solve, but it's not the only problem that games have. In fact, almost the fundamental problem that games have is what I just spoke about, that ability to create a very liquid secondary market economy for millions of assets to be traded between millions of users at really high scales and frequency with different types of trading methods. So like trading things for limit orders, trading things using metadata properties, trading things using NFT AMMs, all of those types of products. Right? Immutable is incredibly invested in ensuring that we don't just give you an API that mints many tokens. We actually want to make sure that the communities that are built around those tokens are being built around a really liquid marketplace. There's a ton of stuff that goes into that. And I would say that over the short term, we're really focused on how can we create the best platform for solving that problem of scale. But over the medium and long term, you want to do everything that you need to have that really, really robust and liquid economy for your community.
And in that case, what are you most excited about for Q2 and beyond?
So probably the thing that I'm most excited about, I'll speak firstly about the way that the space is going, and then I'll speak about what Immutable's doing. I'm so excited about, I guess, the influx of interest into the space over the past 6 to 9 months. It's been amazing to see the game studios, the high quality content producers, the fantastic even Web2 businesses who are now interested in entering into the space. and are actually taking it seriously. I think lots of brands sort of did NFT drops for the sake of doing something over the course of 2021. Seeing people who are much more invested in building something that actually is going to offer long-term value, even if that requires a long-term investment on their end, is incredibly exciting. I think what I'm really excited about on Immutable's end is obviously just scaling our product to make sure that we can match the expectations of there are like hundreds of games and hundreds of marketplaces, and making sure that we can glue those together in that liquidity network. But probably one of the things I'll say that I'm most excited about is I'm really obsessed with how can we make NFTs, particularly those high volume NFTs, a more liquid asset class. In our experience with Gods Unchained, which now has I think 20 million NFTs, we've sort of seen all the challenges that come with, hey, if you want all the players of a game to have access to NFTs, and you want NFTs to be at a variety of different price points, everywhere from 10 cents to $1 to $10,000. There are so many problems that come with building an economy like that in NFTs. The wallets are pretty terrible for holding that amount of value, right? Like just sort of scrolling through an endless list of NFTs, right? The marketplaces are very generic and don't usually target your particular assets at all. Right? You're restricted in the types of trading that you can do. I think something that I'm really, really excited about is what does that fantastic NFT trading user experience look like when you have 50 or 100 million NFTs in a game, right? The idea that you can list your asset once and have it listed on many, many marketplaces via Immutable shared order book. The idea that you could have an insta sell because there is think about it as like an AMM based on metadata characteristics for those NFTs. There's just so much exciting stuff that we can do with higher quality projects that are coming into the space every day, and B, on Immutable's end, the ability to facilitate that really, really powerful trade volume and liquidity and an awesome user experience for trading high volume, high scale NFTs, which I think is what the space definitely needs.
So we say liquidity a lot in Immutable. What does liquidity mean actually for you, Alex, specifically from your perspective?
That's such a great question. And I think this is something where you sort of, you really get used to saying it, but it actually means different things in different contexts. Right? When we talk about liquidity in traditional financial markets, that has a particular meaning. Liquidity in our context even looks a little bit different. We could talk about metricizing it and say, okay, well, it's about the floor price and the number of holders or the turnover of assets, or the depth of the buy order book. There are lots of ways of measuring it. The way that I like to think about it, though, and I think maybe the way, particularly for our non-technical audience, is when you're building or when you're participating in an NFT project, what you really care about is, hey, when I'm buying these assets, am I going to be able to engage in robust trading? Right? Maybe they go up, maybe they go down, but is there a buyer, right, on the other end? Right? Does someone want this asset for some reason? Right? Is there a market? Once you start having liquid markets where lots of people are trading the assets, even if the price is fluctuating in either direction, like liquid markets don't always go up, it just creates so much interesting content and so many really interesting mechanics that people can plan around, can build around. So it is that the robustness and the health of that secondary market economy for the assets. That's really what we mean when we talk about liquidity. Obviously, we measure, there's a much more detailed answer I can give to that question. We measure it in a variety of ways for different projects, but ultimately it's about the health of your secondary market economy.
Got it. And we say, and connected to that, we say integrating with marketplaces is a big part of our strategy. How does that connect with liquidity, and what do we mean by integrating with marketplaces?
Another great question. When Immutable integrates with marketplaces, what we're really talking about is there are two types of integration, right? There are integrations for assets and integrations for orders. So the traditional NFT marketplace integration, when a new marketplace supports a new chain or a new settlement environment or a new rollup like Immutable X, they just display assets. So if you've got something there, maybe it shows up in your inventory and you can then use it on that marketplace. And so that's kind of like phase one, and that's pretty good. But that does create a lot of problems, right? You'll see that even on Ethereum, for instance, a lot of the volume is done through marketplaces like OpenSea, which we'll chat about later. There are some new marketplaces which are now beginning to challenge that dominance. But what actually forms often a really sort of tight, restriction, right, is that there's no sharing of orders between these marketplaces. So if you want to build a small website, right, or a startup marketplace, or like a community site for Gods Unchained, you have to develop all of your own. You have to go and get people to go and make listings on your particular marketplace. Right? What Immutable X does when we integrate a marketplace is we actually share all of the orders from all of the other marketplaces that integrate with Immutable X, right, with that marketplace. Those originating marketplaces get fees from all those trades, right? So they're incentivized to do it, right? And then thousands of marketplaces could potentially settle that order. So if you're a marketplace, you're taking a fee, right, and your order is more likely to be settled. Right? If you're a marketplace that's receiving orders from another marketplace, right, then those orders, right, of course, are like substantially contributing to the fact that you can actually go and attract new users, and you can go and get yourself off the ground as a marketplace. It's extremely powerful. So when we talk about integrating marketplaces and liquidity, our real goal is, hey, how can we make sure that there are as many venues as possible for trading these assets? Right? So if you're a Gods Unchained user, you can choose the venue that suits you, and that will still have a really deep order book. You can still find the assets that you want, and you can still engage in really robust trading across hundreds of marketplaces. And this is something that no other blockchain or platform for games offer.
Awesome. And obviously, one of the key marketplaces a lot of people are looking forward to is GameStop. Will this be any different with any other marketplace? How does Immutable X really integrate with GameStop?
Essentially, it's just as I talked about. Immutable X assets are going to be showing up on the GameStop marketplace. So all of your existing Immutable X assets, you'll be able to trade there. And Immutable X orders that originate on other Immutable X marketplaces will show up on GameStop. So on day one, there are going to be millions of listings there. People are going to see every single asset that you've ever created. All of your book games assets will be there on day one. And similarly, every user who lists assets on the GameStop marketplace, all of those orders are going to show up everywhere else on the Immutable X protocol. Right. So the net effect of this will be essentially the whole Immutable X ecosystem is about to become substantially more liquid.
And what is the difference of that with being a wallet? Like, for example, we hear about Loopring creating a wallet. We hear about Optimism creating stuff. Arbitrum will create stuff. Like all these other layer twos will also create other stuff. What is the thing that differentiates us with that?
Immutable is very, very focused on solving the core needs of those high-scale NFT projects like games. Which means that we are the platform, I would say, out of any other Ethereum rollup, we are really, really focused on pulling in high-quality content to Immutable X. And that's the reason that all these marketplaces want to integrate with us, which is we have all of these awesome games that are being built, and all those assets can show up on your marketplace. For rollups and chains that are less sort of NFT focused and don't have as much content, right, they sort of are adopting different strategies. So there you're thinking about a Loopring or an Optimism or an Arbitrum. In Loopring's case, part of what they're building is a wallet. And that wallet is going to be able to be used for the trading of NFTs. And it's also going to allow you to do token swaps and things like that on Loopring. Right? Loopring NFTs will also be supported. So if you've got native Loopring NFTs, right, but obviously there are substantially fewer Loopring NFTs versus rollups which have that as their primary focus and the area that they're targeting. And I suppose the reason that GameStop and Immutable X are working together so closely is we want to use their distribution, and they want to take advantage of the existing Immutable X ecosystem and content that's already been constructed and will continue to be expanded.
One point of clarification, will IMX holders get any value if NFTs are traded via other people's wallets? Like, for example, Loopring, etc., wallets that are not in Immutable X?
There are two answers to this question. Right? So the Loopring wallet is perfectly capable of supporting Immutable X assets. And if there are Immutable X assets that are being traded, Immutable X holders are absolutely going to be getting value through the Immutable X token. Right? So obviously the part of the revenue there will be shared with stakers, right? And stakers, of course, will receive that value. For trades that happen entirely sort of off Immutable X, right? So trades that, for instance, happen on a rollup like Arbitrum, right? Or even things that happen on the Loopring rollup directly via something like the Loopring wallet, Immutable X token holders wouldn't receive a fee from that. Right? But of course, the primary game in town is where's all the best content, and the best content is on Immutable X. So I'd say that we're excited about new wallets, new marketplaces are just new distribution options.
Awesome. In that case, let's move on to the community questions then. Thank you for answering those questions. First question is all about the Immutable product. This one is from VXL House. Imagine you had a magic wand and you could upgrade one thing within the Immutable's product portfolio. What would it be and why?
Good question. I think there's lots of upgrades that we'd love to make across the suite. I think one of our biggest challenges is finding that prioritization focus. Like, what are the most important problems that we can solve for games all the time? I think if there was one product upgrade that we'd like to make, maybe I'll pick two. I think one, which is really obvious, is ensuring that we are actually able to provide different types of NFT trading. So at the moment, Immutable X only supports limit orders, and that's like, hey, I'll sell my card for $5. Someone else says, yeah. We're obviously going to be rolling out support for buy orders quite soon. That's, hey, I'll offer $5 on your card. I want to get to the point where people are, hey, I'll offer $5 for any red dragon, right, or any gold Gods on Chain card. And moving from that towards things like AMMs, towards things like fractionalization, towards things like renting and loans, like just different additions of what we call trading primitives, which are going to increase the liquidity of all NFTs on Immutable X. Being able to fast forward that and get to the point where we have, hey, there's a massive, people can trade things in the most liquid manner possible. We have a really thriving economy. That's certainly one. I think the other one is something that I think we'll have some news for everyone on very soon. I think that's also ensuring that at the moment, Immutable X is a really, really awesome product for games which have economies, which have like NFTs and which have one token. But for games with much more complex economies, which will have 3 or 4 tokens or might require very complex staking mechanics, they often want a system with smart contracts or EVM compatibility. I think we might have some fun updates for you there soon, and I'll tell you what I'd use the magic wand on very shortly.
What a tease. Thank you very much. The next one is from Scorer. What are your plans on providing quality control for bad and scammy projects?
Great question. And I think this is something that definitely matters to us. Like, we feel bad when we see projects that are low quality, which are taking advantage of the community. I think there's obviously a difference between projects which have very ambitious roadmaps and then don't deliver on those roadmaps versus projects which are out and out scams. And I think you've got to be careful about what you put into each bucket. Immutable has no wish to be the central arbiter of who gets to use the platform. I think it's against some of the core principles of what Web3 is about. Right? Ultimately, we have to, rather than restricting people from the platform, we have to give users the tools that they need to make better decisions, right? And also trying to help those users find some recourse against projects that do scam. We think what I would say is, we don't think that means that in a marketplace layer that your marketplace needs to display every single NFT project that's on the protocol. So we don't want to block people from the protocol, but if your marketplace wants to curate projects, we'd encourage that anyway. Like, it doesn't just mean about scammy. Like, we think some marketplaces should concentrate on gaming only projects, maybe like only Japanese projects, and there's lots of different axes of differentiation. We think that that's something that should be determined by marketplaces, including our own marketplace. Right? We'll be, I think, discussing the way that we want to showcase the best possible Immutable X projects on our marketplace quite soon. Right? But we don't think that's a protocol level responsibility, and we think that it's generally bad to have someone in a position that they could take censorship actions like that. And we've tried to remove that power from ourselves as much as possible.
Going back to the ethos of the blockchain. The next questions are all about the partners. This one is from Scorer again. What is keeping our games or other games from joining Immutable? Were there any efforts to get Embersword on board 100% on Immutable instead of 2 chains? What do you think about this?
Fantastic. I think this is just a question of timing. The Embersword team, I think, are 100% on board. Everything will eventually be migrated to Immutable X. They see the value in that long-term, future-focused gaming partnership. Obviously, hey, as a game that had already launched on Polygon back when that was the only option, and then had to sort of saw the superior technology and some of the product advantages of Immutable X, right, have been looking to make that transition. Right? Obviously, that's something that takes time, but I'm sure, I think I speak for the Embersword team when I'm saying that they're super keen to accelerate that into the future.
Awesome. The next one is from Tyrus. The Illuvium land sale is taking place on L1, not IMX. What happened? How likely will the technical limitations occur for other Ethereum-based projects building on Immutable X?
We actually, I think, pitched this design for the Illuvium land sale to the Illuvium team. And what's happening is the land sale itself is taking place on layer 1. So you're using your layer 1 ETH to purchase these plots. The blockchain is recording an event, right? And then Illuvium is basically minting those assets on Immutable X. So all of the land that's sold in the Illuvium land sale is going to be immediately tradable on Immutable X and on all Immutable X marketplaces. The reason that we encouraged Illuvium in particular to do this sale on layer 1 was partly because they already had a lot of it constructed in that way. Right? But secondly, because it was very important to them that they were able to access the liquidity of Ethereum. So like it or not, there's just a lot of people with a lot of funds on Ethereum at the moment, and making sure that those people are able to get those funds, like pay in the best possible user experience, just makes sense. And secondly, because when you want to support things like, particularly at high scale, sort of like very auditable and fair sales, right? Being able to do that on Ethereum is still regarded as the gold standard. One of the reasons that we're really excited about the partnership and the reason that we pitched that design is, hey, having a very popular sale that then mints all those assets on Immutable X, which then people have to then deposit to trade those assets for ETH on Immutable X. That's one of the key ways in which we, I guess, overcome that liquidity gap for those partners and make sure that they can do absolutely everything they want, only using immutable solutions.
Touching on that a little bit more, do you think this is a disadvantage or an advantage, and will we be seeing this model more or less in the future?
I think we'll be seeing this model about the same as we are now, right? Whereas it's going to make a lot of sense for some projects to do all their primary sales, right, on layer 2 directly, right? It's not gas feasible to do the sale on layer 1, right? And people, you do want to have access to the community of buyers and the people who are really interested in blockchain games who already exist on the Immutable X platform. At the same time, if you're a project that has massive marketing distribution, attracts a lot of attention from L1 whales, there is a really strong argument for that. I think this is likely something that I think we'll even see what products we offer in this area. Our key goal is for those assets to be minted and traded on Immutable X. When it comes to primary sales, we just want to solve the problems that games have. If it's possible to run successful primary sales on layer 1, we're really interested in that. Right? We just want to make sure that the secondary trading of those assets is hyperliquid.
Next is from Sincere. GoG and GU are taking a while to develop. Why is that?
This is game development. Right? When I would say that internally, we're not concerned about the progress that we're making with each of these games. These games have incredibly exciting roadmaps. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm sure we'll get Justin or Clay or Derek at some point on for these Exec AMAs and share that with the community. There is lots of bugs, right? Absolutely right. There's lots to improve on, absolutely right. But remember that even when Gods Unchained was created, there weren't any high quality blockchain games. Right? Even as we sit here now, we're still just at the forefront of seeing what blockchain games can actually be. And it turns out, I think a lot of projects right now are announcing games or they're saying, hey, we're going to build things. Building really high quality, particularly high quality, like in-engine games, so things like like mobile games or even like desktop, Unity, Unreal Engine type games, takes a long amount of time. Right? It takes much longer than building simple web MVP prototype games. Right? And we are really, really invested in building something that will actually stand the course of time and be here for the long term. We're not interested in launching a fairly bad game, jacking that up with token incentives, and then essentially leaving it for whales to dump on community members. We actually genuinely want that long-term economy for these games.
Next one is from Moali31. What are your thoughts on VeVe and IMX working together, particularly around the Disney, Marvel, and DC on the marketplace?
We're always excited to see new fantastic content coming to Immutable X, whether that's gaming content directly or whether that's high-quality entertainment content. We want things that people want to trade. So we see this content, we're really happy, and tons of people want to trade these VeVe assets. Unfortunately, at the moment, due to some licensing restrictions on Gomi's end, a lot of the trading of those assets is sort of isolated inside the app, right? So even though the assets are on Immutable X, right, and the transactions are being recorded as transactions, right, they're not actually, all of the wallets are basically bound to your VeVe app. Right? And that means that you can't take those assets and use them on other marketplaces. We're working with the Gomi team to fix that. It's on their end, so I'll let them speak to the timelines. But Immutable is fully technologically ready to support those assets. We just have to make sure that users can use those wallets to either send them to another wallet on Immutable X, or we can get those wallets and we can support those wallets on different marketplaces so that those users can actually use those assets across the protocol. But we are so excited about having this content. We just want to make sure that content is massively accessible to as many people.
The next one is from Cryptbox Case.
Yep.
Do you have any OpenSea updates? Why is the integration delayed?
Perfect. This is a question we get asked a lot. I think it's a question that we've fielded ever since the announcement. Right? I don't have any updates that we haven't provided already. Right? We are working actively on the integration, right? But we don't have a set in stone launch date at the moment. Right? We're looking at around Q3, right? But again, nothing is set in stone. The primary reason for that, and I know that's a frustrating thing for the community to hear, right, is that the OpenSea team essentially are very behind on a lot of the timelines on their end. Right? They're working incredibly hard. They have a great team, but I think obviously becoming one of the fastest growing startups ever almost overnight, they're swamped with the amount of work they have to do, even to keep the site up. Right? And integrating, I think where I'll say like, obviously the OpenSea team recently launched with, they added Solana as the next blockchain. That integration, right, was substantially behind schedule based on when it had initially been, right? And I would say that without giving too much about internal operations away, the Immutable X integration sits in the same bucket. Right? We're actively dedicating some resources on our end to do anything that we can to move that forward. But obviously there is just like, the site just doesn't stay up all the time, right? And they've got to make sure that they get there internally, as well as adding new content, particularly when that new content, it's really high scale NFTs itself, right? So adding, I guess on OpenSea's end, lots of high scale NFTs, lots of high scale orders, that's a bit of a scary thing for them to countenance at the moment. Okay. What I will say though is this has been part of why we've been so invested in that marketplace strategy, right? We really care massively about, hey, how can we have all these assets on as many marketplaces as possible? Right? OpenSea will definitely help, but at the end of the day, after Solana support was added to OpenSea, Solana's NFT volumes didn't really change. Right? Even Polygon's NFT volumes are still pretty low, right? Simply because people don't value the assets or the project as much. Right? We are really, really committed to our strategy of find great projects with assets that people want to trade, and then unlock as many marketplaces experiences as possible. Right? We'd love to unlock OpenSea as soon as we can, and we're working really hard towards that goal. Right? But it's not entirely within our control as when that launches.
Awesome. Moving on to another exciting topic, tokens and staking. The first one is from Tyrus. What will extra staking rewards actually look like? And will IMX governance actually play a part in this?
Awesome, great question. And I love the discussion of IMX governance as well. So this is in reference to when we provided the tokenomics portal. I think there's an update that's dropping on that really soon as well. Right? We discussed the possibility of essentially, while the protocol is first launching staking and in the sort of the nascency of that development, right, supplementing the staking pool with funds or incentives from Immutable's end, right, to incentivize people to stake the Immutable X tokens. Right? We don't have anything specific to announce on that front, and you'll be first to know when we do. Right? What I will say is it's very important that we provide people who are, we're not going to seek to provide the highest APY protocol of all time, right? The goal on our end is to ensure that we actually have a way to incentivize people who really care about the future of Immutable's products and protocol. There's enough of an incentive for them to stake their tokens, right, and to contribute to the protocol in that way. Right? That structure at the moment, the first draft of this will likely be decided by Immutable, but we'd love to set it up so that medium term there are some levers here for the community to pull, particularly around some of the structuring of rewards, or even we've discussed that if you want a little bit of alpha, right, having some of the best projects on Immutable X, dropping NFTs or like doing limited edition drops or allow lists to IMX stakers. I think there could be some governance input on that. It's certainly something that we'll consider.
Awesome. Super exciting. As a token holder myself, by the way. WT. Will Immutable eventually be an exchange to swap available assets between each other? Example, ETH to God, USDC to GoG.
I'll say that this is certainly within our plans. Right? We are keen to allow this functionality. It's not super close. It's not going to be here, certainly not this quarter, but it is something that we are interested in because we know that there is just a bit of a liquidity gap here. What I'd love to see is almost two things. I'd love to see this instance swapping, but B, even like, let's say you click on buy for an NFT and you don't have the right currency, right? Like let's say you have a lot of gods and not a lot of ETH, right? Or a lot of ETH and not a lot of gods, allowing you to essentially do all of that in one big step where you swap the token and then make the purchase, wrapping that all up in one experience. That's a classic example of the really great user experiences that Immutable X as a one-stop vertically integrated shop can provide to users. So this is definitely something that we're interested in.
Speaking of the future, these are all future-looking questions. Next, the first one is from BX House. What emerging NFT use cases are the most exciting growth areas in Immutable for you?
Ooh, good question. Look, we are very focused on that gaming vertical, and there's a key reason for that. It's because focusing on solving all problems for everyone at the same time is a great way to build a product that doesn't actually solve any of those problems. And we're very focused in on gaming as kind of our lead vertical for the moment. We think though that around collectibles for assets in metaverses and things like that, there's just so much exciting stuff there. We get to see so many really cool projects. I'm not going to share, hey, it's definitely going to be this, or it's definitely going to be that. But personally, I think the idea of like, sort of like wearables and things like that inside metaverse type environments, I think that's a pretty exciting thing. And there's some really cool projects, I think some Imbu style things that are going to be even coming to Immutable X. I've seen some of that stuff already, and it's going to be super dope.
Speaking of wearables, Alex the Great is asking, are there any plans for being able to rent NFTs on Immutable? Just like, for example, for Gods on Chain.
Yeah, so at the moment, we don't support this as Immutable. And if it were included by someone, it would have to be trusted. Right? But someone could implement a trusted version of this today. And maybe that's a good business idea from someone. As far as us actually supporting this is something that we want to get towards. It's not something that's as high a priority for us as it is in games like an Axie, right, where you have extremely expensive assets that you need to play the game. We want Gods Unchained to be a game that anyone can just pick up a deck and start playing and be onboarded that way. But for really high value assets like shiny legendaries or things like mythic cards, it would be pretty cool to have some sort of renting system. So it's interesting to us, but it's not a high priority for now.
Next one is from Guynance100. How is Immutable as an Australian-based company attracting big capital investors, for example, investors from America?
The best way to attract big capital investors is by building quality products that lots of people want to use and lots of companies want to build on. Have we attracted increased attention? All of Immutable's fundraising rounds that we've done have been substantially oversubscribed, including from funds in America and funds elsewhere. I mean, our last fund was led by Temasek, which is essentially like the investment arm of the Singaporean Sovereign Wealth Fund. Our Series A was led by an American company. Our Series B actually was BigCraft, so over in Europe. We have found that it's been substantially easier to attract attention from these investors. A, the space is very hot, but B, people just want to use our product, right? And investors are now looking at the market extremely globally, right? So that's been a super exciting thing for us, because I think that certainly wasn't always the case for Australian companies, particularly early stage Australian companies, now that it wasn't super easy to go and raise money from the world, right? In fact, we've been able to be super picky about the companies that we work with, right? We've even turned down like big name investors in various cases, either because the terms weren't right or the incentives weren't right to align with the community or the vision for where we wanted to take the product, right? Like, we have been very fortunate to be able to choose our own destiny when it came to the investment that we were able to secure, and what that meant for, I guess, the product that we're able to build, particularly when it came to things like tokenomics. Right? That's not something that all investors will let you have flexibility with.
Time for some casual questions. What keeps you up at night?
I don't know. That's a casual question. I mean, I'd say probably the big thing here is I care a lot about security. It's one of the reasons why we chose to be a ZK rollup in the first place, and we chose to use that technology was because we really cared about, hey, core to what it means to have like self-sovereignty and self-custody over your assets, and like that true digital ownership of your gaming assets is the fact that no one is going to be able to steal them. And I think seeing sort of like hacks like the Ronin one a few weeks ago, seeing DeFi hacks with people losing money because of smart contract bugs or similar, that's certainly something that I worry about. I'm not as worried as I think some other chains should be. If you're wondering which ones those are, feel free to read the blog article that I wrote the other day. But at the bottom of that article, it also contains a list of other sort of potential vulnerabilities, things like marketplaces or like even attacking wallets to show users the wrong stuff or getting users to sign transactions they don't intend. We're working really hard on our end to protect our users as much as possible, but ultimately nothing is perfectly secure all the way across. I'd say the thing that keeps me up at night is how can we keep doing more to care about our players more and to ensure that there is no chance of like them losing funds while those users are using our products.
There's a couple of questions we've chosen to really drive it home. First is from VX House again. What is Immutable's unique competitive advantage versus other L2s focusing on NFT marketplaces? How will we distinguish ourselves?
Couple of things here. The first thing I'll say is that Immutable really is a one-stop shop platform for games. We have wallet products, we have those order book products, we have those minting API products. You go and use almost any other sort of roll-up and you're like taking things piecemeal and they don't quite fit together, and the holistic benefit is nowhere near as much, right? So that vertical integration, I think, is very important to us. The other thing that's really crucial is that Immutable is like, we're out there like talking, we're not just saying, hey guys, we're a technology company, like come and look at our product, it's the best product ever. We talk to every marketplace, we talk to every game, and we're out there basically A, right, selling them our product, but B, co-designing what an awesome game or service or product would look like in the case of any of these studios, to say this is what the future of Web3 games is going to look like, right? Like look what's there at the moment. We can do so much better than this. Right? Having those big commercial relationships and ensuring that we're actually able to be there as a position to make those businesses more successful is crucially important to our strategy and totally differentiating in the blockchain space, where people generally are not very strong at B2B relationships. Right? I think the sustainable competitive advantage that we hope to extract from that is having connected this big network of games to this big network of marketplaces. Right? It's going to be extremely difficult for anyone to compete with the network effects that's driven by, I guess, the liquidity that's flowing between those various participants, and being able to A, build the right product that gets all of those customers sold on Immutable X, right? And B, actually having the B2B capability to go out to them, convince them to integrate, stay with them through that integration journey, ensure that they're still being successful in the protocol and they're achieving their goals. That's not at all something that we think that many blockchain companies can do. And that's why we've really lasered in on making that a clear differentiation.
Final one, what are you most excited about in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so I think I've already covered, I guess, a couple of things that I'm excited about. And I think, magic wanding, that's the type of stuff that we talk about there. In terms of key takeaways, what I would love for the community to remember is like the Immutable X, like even like the goal of Immutable X, right, is to really enable those like high scale, high quality NFT games to be built. Those games take a little bit longer, right? But they are going to provide much more liquid, much deeper economies, right? With much better, like just much better trading for assets, right? Ensuring that you're pitching all of your projects to use Immutable X, right? If you're a member of a community, advocating for the benefits Immutable X can bring, right? And B, advocating for marketplaces to use Immutable X, right? That's really the future that we see, right? That big network of games and marketplaces brought together by Immutable X. And we want to make sure that essentially all of the incentives are in place over the next year. You're going to see us building products for marketplaces, products for games, right? Products for users. And at the heart of it all, you're going to see the Immutable X token and the Immutable X community as advocates and evangelists to all of those different participants. And we're very excited to go on that journey with you.
Awesome, and that's a wrap. Thank you, Alex, for taking the time to share your thoughts to the community. We'll be recording and releasing more in the coming weeks. For everybody listening, please join our Discord server to keep updated and send your feedback and questions. Once again, this is the second of our executive AMA series, an experiment to provide insights and transparency to even more communication between our community and our execs. So with that in mind, see you in the Discord. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.